Hello learners. We have been discussing about various environmental valuation techniques. Today, in the last lecture of the environmental valuation techniques, we will be talking about the concept of the market-based valuation methods of environment, and also we'll be talking about the types of these market valuation techniques, particularly the cost-based market valuation techniques. So let me just introduce this concept of market-based cost. We have already understood the revealed preference method and we have talked about the stated preference method. Let me just give you an introduction about the market-based method, particularly the cost-based method. The market-based approach is basically using the market price of goods and services to value environmental goods and services. So instead of going for a surrogate market or going for survey of the people by making a hypothetical situation, in case of market-based approach, the market price of goods and services are being used to value the environmental goods and services. Economic value of environmental goods and services using market-based approach can be estimated either from the benefit or the cost point of view. Means what we are doing is we are trying to put economic value to environmental goods and services using the market-based approach, using the market prices of goods and services. Now, there are two ways of doing it. One, you can look at the benefits derived or you can look at the cost incurred. So, it can be a benefit approach or it can be a cost point of view. So, if we want to see it graphically, we say that the market-based approach can get divided in benefits or it can be cost-based approach. If we talk about benefit-based approach, there are two ways of calculating or doing environmental valuation. One is called as a productivity approach, other is called as a foregone earning approach. However, when you look at the market cost-based approaches, then there are four methods. One is opportunity cost, then we have replacement cost, then we have relocation cost, and then the last is preventive expenditure. So as I mentioned to you, we will be talking and explaining the market cost-based approaches to evaluating the environment. And in that, we will be having a look at all these four approaches, that is opportunity cost, replacement cost, relocation cost, and preventive expenditures. And I'm sure learners, for you, these terms may be seeming a little familiar, particularly the opportunity cost. Just give a thought on when you did this opportunity cost and what does it mean. What is opportunity cost? Let me start. Opportunity cost is basically a method which values the benefits of the environmental protection in terms of what is being foregone to achieve it. As I said, what is opportunity cost in economics? We say resources have alternate uses. If I pick one use, I am not taking up the other, and because of that, I may be foregoing some earning which I could have made. That is called as opportunity cost. So when we are doing or when we are taking an opportunity cost approach to environmental valuation, we say that the value of the benefits of environmental protection are calculated in terms of what is being foregone to achieve it. That is, if we are we are protecting the environment and we are getting some benefits. Now, I want to put some value on the benefits. Then what we will be doing in this approach is we will be seeing if we are spending money or the benefits which we are getting by conservation of or the protection of this environment. If we would not have done this, what would have we done? And alternate resources, alternate option which I have, what I would have gained from it. Okay, so whatever I am leaving, the benefit of leaving that, I take it as an opportunity cost. So Does it means that it calculates the value of the best alternative use of that resource? If I have not been protecting this environment, then what would I have been doing? What was the value of that I have not used right now? That is the alternative use of that resource. So, in environmental valuation, it refers to value of the benefits that could be obtained from the resources next best alternative. That is, if these resources which I have been using to protect the environment, if I would not have been dedicating these resources to environmental protection, I would have used them somewhere else. If I would have used them somewhere else, I must have got some benefit. The value of that benefit we compare with the benefit of the environment protection. That is called as opportunity cost. For example, I'm sure this example will make things a little more clear to you. For example, the value of conserving a forest for a national park instead of utilizing it for timber production can be gauged by the income forfeited from the alternative uses like agriculture or forestry. What example we are giving? We are saying that if we are conserving a forest for a national park, right? Instead of utilizing that forest for timber production, what I could have done is I could have fell down the trees and use the wood for timber production. But I am not doing that. What are we doing? We are saving that environment. We are saving that forest for the purpose of national park. So this means that I am foregoing the next best use of this forest, that is timber production. That comes under forestry. So whatever income I would have earned by going in for timber production instead of conserving it for national park, that is what we will be valuing in the opportunity cost approach. So basically this approach is measuring what has to be given up for the sake of conservation. So what am I giving up? Right now, I am giving up this timber production for the sake of this national park, right? So this approach is measuring what has to be given up for the sake of conservation. It does not measure the benefits of land conserved for unpriced uses. So we are only talking about those uses which has certain monetary value. For example, in this case, the one we have shown, we are right now talking about is, there is a priced use. Selling timber in the market has a priced use. Therefore, we are comparing it with that. For instance, again, as we have said that we are only talking about price to use and opportunity cost. For instance, in this case, we will not be estimating the recreation benefits of national park. Recreation benefits of that national park we had calculated where? We had calculated using the travel cost method. In opportunity cost method, we are just saying what was the market value of the next best alternative if this forest would not have been conserved for the purpose of a national park. So we are only focusing on the priced uses and not on the non-priced uses. Therefore, this method is used to form a basis of compensation payments for the compulsory purchase by the government of land and property. That is, if government is acquiring land for the purpose of developing a highway, or if the government is acquiring land for the purpose of mining, a forest, let us say, is going to be destroyed for the purpose of mining, then the government wants to estimate that what should be the compensation we need to pay. So for that, the government is going to estimate that the livelihood cost of being dependent on that forest, that will be the opportunity cost. So compensation payments generally are based on this opportunity cost. There are a few steps which are involved in the opportunity cost valuation. The most important being, you have to identify the alternative uses. For example, we identified the alternate uses of a forest for timber production or for agriculture. Then you have to do a market analysis to understand that who are the stakeholders, what scenario is going to happen, and what are the various alternative uses. Once you understand the alternative uses, you have to quantify the benefits because you have to give certain monetary value. So we estimate the benefits of all the values associated with various alternative uses. For the marketable values, you will use market price. For non-marketable values, we are going to use the willing to pay method service. Then you will calculate the opportunity cost, which is basically benefits of the alternative use and the benefit of environmental use. So that gap will give us the opportunity cost. The second method that we have in the market cost based method is the replacement cost method. As the name is indicating, this method estimates the economic value of environmental assets or services by determining the cost of replacing them with man-made or alternative solutions. This method says that we are going to estimate the economic value of the environmental assets. That is, we are going to give a monetary value to the environmental assets, goods or services. How? By determining what was the cost, what will be the cost of replacing them with man-made or an alternative solution. That is, if I am, removing a national park and replacing it with a man-made solution, then what will be the economic value of that environmental asset? So this method also relies on the market prices. But the value of goods and services is measured instead by how much it would cost to replace it. That is, you have to say that if I am removing this particular environmental asset, then how much money I will have to spend to replace this with certain alternative solution. So basically, replacement cost, what it is doing, it is quantifying the economic value of environmental assets by assessing the cost of potential substitutes or alternatives. So what is it doing? It is quantifying the economic value only, because our objective is to find the economic value only. How? By assessing the cost of the potential substitutes or the alternatives. For example, I am saying that you need to cut down forest, right? So you say, okay, if you're cutting down forest, replant it somewhere else, right? So what are you doing? You are replacing a natural asset by substituting through a man-made thing. So on your own, you are going to replant somewhere else the equal number of trees. For instance, a forest could be valued by how much it would cost to replant it. If the same forest, the same number of plants with the same number of age of trees, if we have to replant it somewhere else, how much it will cost us? So expenditure actually incurred on replacement, hence, is the measure of the minimum willingness to pay to continue to receive a particular benefit. For example, for the purpose of development, we need to cut down a forest in an urban area, and we say, for example, this is the that particular patch of land was we call as the lungs of the city. But you need to remove it because you need certain development projects to come at that place. So what the authorities would try to do is to say that if we are cutting down this forest, the same number of trees, if we plant somewhere else, what would be the cost of replacing the same assets? So expenditure actually incurred on replacement hence becomes a measure of the minimum willingness to pay to continue to receive the particular benefit. That is, you say, okay, don't cut down the forest. Whatever money you need, we will give it to you. So you are talking about the expenditure you are going to make to keep the thing still in place. Now, as we have certain steps in opportunity cost, replacement cost valuation also has certain steps. We'll have a look at it. The first is you have to identify the environmental asset or service. Then you have to determine the replacement options. We want to replace an environmental asset. We want to replace an environmental service. Then What are the replacement options available to you? How you can, through alternative method or through man-made method, you can replace this environmental asset. Once you decide the various replacement options, we need to calculate the replacement cost by understanding what expenditure we have to make on this replacement man-made asset. This replacement cost can be a direct cost, it can be an indirect cost. But the main assumption here it is that the replacement is only worth doing if the WTP, that is the willingness to pay, is as high as the replacement cost. That is, you say, let the forest there be. Do not remove this environmental asset. We are willing to pay that much. Now, if this willingness to pay is as high as the replacement cost, then only it will have a meaning. For example, I'm saying the replacement cost is, let us say, for example, 10,000 rupees. Okay, but my willingness to pay is 5,000 rupees to keep that asset as it is. This would mean that I am not valuing that asset as high as its replacement cost. Hence, it is better that I replace it. So, in the replacement cost, what we have to see is that the WTP, that is willingness to pay, is as high as the replacement cost. The next technique, the third technique that we have in market cost-based method is the relocation cost. Till now, what we have done is we have understood opportunity cost, wherein we were seeing that what was the value of the alternative use of this particular asset, or how, if second, we had talked about the replacement cost, that is, if this environmental asset or service is removed, then if I have to replace it, then what will be the cost of replacement? The third is relocation, the name itself, relocation, that is, you are going to relocate it. So, relocation cost is the cost which is required to move an environmental asset or service to an alternative location. You are not, replacement is, you say, okay, I destroy this environmental asset, but I will replace it with a man-made asset. Relocation, I'm saying, is that I am going to move this environmental asset or service from this location to another location. So, you are changing the location, let us say, from A to B. So, the cost which is involved in relocating from A to B is what we call as relocation cost technique. So, in environmental valuation, what does it involve? In environmental valuation, it quantifies the economic value of environmental assets by evaluating the costs of potential relocation to a different site. That is, what will be the value of that environmental asset by understanding that if I'm going to relocate it to another site, then what will be the cost there? So, this means that this method is relying on the data on the potential expenditure. I am going to move site A to site B. So, all the cost which is going to be incurred for moving site A to site B is what? It is the potential expenditure. So, you are going to relocate an environmental asset from one site to another site, and for relocation of that from site A to site B, what is the potential expenditure? When we calculate it, we call it as a relocation cost technique. In the relocation cost technique, let us imagine a scenario. Let us say there is a 50-acre wetland area and it needs to be slated for development due to urban expansion. Because we need to expand our urban area, it is important and it is required that we, this wetland area needs to be slated. So, environmentalists are going to argue for the conservation of this wetland because it has, of course, a lot of ecological significance. If you remember, in the lecture when we started with the valuation, I had given you a picture of a wetland and I have given you an exercise to find out that what is the use value, what is the non-use value. Within the use values also, I'd ask you to identify the direct use value, indirect use value, and option use value of the wetland. So environmentalists are now talking about that just for urban expansion, you just cannot take away, slate this wetland, because there is a large ecosystem, there is a lot of ecological significance of this wetland. So to determine the economic value of preserving this wetland, the relocation cost technique is applied to estimate the cost of relocating the wetland to alternative sites. So what we say is, okay, we understand that there is an ecological significance, but urban expansion is equally important. So let me relocate this wetland to another area. But for that, we need to estimate that what will be the cost of relocating this wetland from point A to point B, right? Then we have what is called the fourth method, the preventive expenditure technique. What is this preventive expenditure technique? As the name is indicating, you are preventing certain expenditure. This method is also known as exclusion facility, defensive expenditure, or mitigation expenditure. This preventive expenditure method is a cost-based valuation method that uses data on actual expenditures made to alleviate all environmental problems. So how much money I need to spend actually to remove all type of environmental problems. Often costs may be incurred to mitigate or damage caused by adverse environmental impact. We all know if there is a certain environmental impact and we want to mitigate this damage due to this environment, costs need to be incurred. For example, lakes are getting destroyed because of a lot of chemical effluents. Then in order to mitigate the damage which has been caused due to this damage to the water of the lakes, certain money needs to be invested. So that cost is incurred to mitigate the damage caused to the adverse environment. Now, for example, if drinking water is polluted, for example, many a times in our own households, we install water filtering machines because we feel that the water quality we are getting may not be very pure. So for every time you are installing, or every time anybody is buying a water purification unit, some money is going to be spent. Similarly, at the city level, the municipal corporations install water purification systems. So if drinking water is polluted, we require extra purification to be done. Now, this purification would mean that we need to spend, when believe that the benefits from cleaning the water are more than the cost which I'm going to incur to clean the water. So we say that people will then spend when they believe that the benefits from the damage that is going to be avoided will exceed the payment to prevent it. That is, the money I'm going to spend on cleaning or purifying this water will be less than the benefits which I'm going to get by having a purified water. So the expenditure on such counts can be added to obtain the total preventive cost. So for example, we continue with the same example, that we then calculate how much money am I going to spend on purification of water, right? And how much money I might have to spend if I do not purify the water, and there are certain health costs which are associated. So the expenditure on such activities need to be added together to obtain the total preventive cost. Therefore, we are calling as preventive expenditure method. And this will provide an estimate to the value of the environment. That is, if I am spending, let us say, 10,000 rupees to install a water purifier, and I'm purifying certain liters of water because of that, this means that that is the cost of purified water I am attaching to. Then preventive expenditure technique has two variations. There are two variations in these approaches. One is, what are we doing? We are elicitation of what people are willing to pay to prevent damage to the environment or themselves. Okay, that one approach is we are asking people, going to people and asking them that how much are you willing to pay to prevent the damage to the environment or to themselves because of this environmental change. How will this be done? This can be done through stated preference method. We have talked about contingent valuation, or by examining the past events in the similar circumstances through the use of the revealed preference technique. So in preventive expenditure, we are talking about preventive expenditure. We are trying to estimate the value of the environment depending how much money people are willing to spend so that they prevent a certain cost which may get attached to them because the environment is getting damaged. And that cost is the environmental valuation. Now, how will we get that? One, we directly go and ask people, that is through the contingent valuation method, or we go for either travel cost method or hedonic price method. The second approach is you obtain a figure for what it would cost to maintain environmental benefits by investing in the prevention of their degradation. That is, if I avoid this degradation, how much money we will have to spend to avoid this environmental degradation. So one is you are going to individuals and then aggregating their responses. Other is at the cost level, at the unit level, we are trying to understand that if I want to maintain the similar quality of environment, or if I want to improve the environmental quality, the air quality, how much money I would be needing to spend on it. So that are the two approaches to your preventive expenditure technique. So we have talked about 4 types of market cost-based methods. Let us understand what are the limitations. The first is that they may not fully capture non-market value. Since we are talking about environmental valuation using the market price of goods and services, generally the non-market valuation which are intangible. Previous lecture we had talked about that how when we move from direct use value to the non-use value, the things become intangible. The more intangible they become, more difficult it is to value them. So market-based methods are specifically focusing on what is the value market price of goods and services. So they are mainly capturing the market values, use values, but non-market values are difficult to be captured. Then market-based methods may also fail into take into account the externalities which can result in overvaluation and undervaluation, which we have talked previously on how externalities happen and then how overproduction is happening or underproduction is happening, and then how taxes, subsidies can be used, or charges can be used to correct it. But market-based methods may fail to take into account the externalities because they are relying on the market price. Then market imperfections or policy failures may distort market prices, which will therefore fail to reflect in the economic value of goods and services to the society as a whole. We've already seen that private costs do not talk about the marginal damage caused by their activities. Therefore, market price does not reflect the social cost of that environmental damage. And what are we doing in these market-based methods is we are only talking about the market prices. Hence, the valuation is not correct at many times. Now, before finishing this lecture, we'll do a small quiz to recap it. This is a fill in the blank. I've left a blank for this. You have to give me what is the name of this approach of environmental valuation, which measures the value of environmental goods and services by assessing the cost of next best alternative foregone. So, which market cost-based approach is used to value the environment by estimating the cost of the next best alternative foregone? So, the answer is opportunity cost, because next best alternative comes in opportunity cost. Another one is, which approach values environmental goods and services based on the cost incurred to avoid or mitigate environmental damage? Which approach is using environmental goods and services based on the cost incurred to avoid or mitigate that environmental damage? Out of the 4 which we have discussed, opportunity cost, replacement cost, relocation cost, and preventive expenditure, which approach is using the environmental goods and services based on the cost incurred to avoid or mitigate? The answer is preventive expenditure, because we are mitigating the environmental damage by incurring these costs. So what have we done till now in environmental valuation in all the 3-4 lectures? Let's revise them. We had said that the 3 approaches that can be used for economic valuation: market-based approach, revealed preference, and stated preference. In the market-based approach, there are 4 approaches: opportunity cost approach, replacement, relocation, and preventive expenditure. Revealed cost had talked about indirect method of valuation. There we had taken travel cost. We had in detail explained about the zonal total cost, travel cost method. We did hedonic price method, wherein we derived the price of a property, particularly in the housing market, and we try to decompose that how environmental quality and quantity has an impact on the housing prices. And then we did the contingent valuation method, which is a most popular method of stated preference, which is basically a survey based method, wherein we are using, we are going to the, after identifying the respondents, we are going to them and asking them that what value they place to the various types of environmental benefits. So that was the contingent valuation methods. So these are the 3 types of environmental valuation techniques that we use: revealed preference, stated preference, and market cost based. All of them have their own limitations and their importance. It actually depends on what kind of research we are doing, what kind of project we are working on, that we may select certain methods. So I hope you enjoyed these lecture of environmental valuation. Thank you and take care.